The Series 5 Apple Watch was released back in 2019 and it was received really well at the time, mainly because it was the first Apple Watch to have an always-on display. However, today's video is about how it is now and if it's actually any good or if you should buy it or look into getting it. I'll give you a quick answer now, which is if you're looking for a smartwatch, and more particularly an Apple Watch, and you want one that's not extortionate and is better than an SE and you can get it for cheaper, then 100%. This thing you can get refurbished for about 150 to 180 pounds, anywhere from, let's say, Back Market or Amazon. Both of those will give you access to these things and actually have good quality ones. And like I said, you can get them for decent prices, less than an SE, and you get more features by miles than what you get with the SE Apple Watch. Now, when I first got this Apple Watch, I got it as a birthday present, as initially I was wanting to get one because I was getting into running and I wanted something to actually track the runs. And I would say, as my time as a sales colleague and selling things like Apple Watches, Apple products, and just other technology, what I found out a lot of the time is that most people who are coming in for, let's say, an Apple Watch or a smartwatch in general are wanting to just track their fitness, but also the second most common is just because they want it. Those are normally the two. However, I'd say the fitness tracking is normally the priority that people talk about more than anything. And that was no different for myself. I was using this thing every single day and I was absolutely loving it. However, I did come to the end conclusion, which is I rarely use it, and I'll go over why later on. Or if you want to learn even more, I do have a video of why Apple Watches or why smartwatches exist at all. And effectively, a lot of it is to do with the fact that I just love actual watches over smartwatches. However, over that time, I was using it every single day, closing all my rings, and it really does keep you to a level of accountability with something that's not, let's say, one of your friends or a family member, and it does a really good job in actually pushing you to do things like work out, because you'll see your rings and you'll be like, oh, I need to get that done today. However, once the novelty starts to wear off, you then will start to see of what is this thing actually used for, and the second most possible reason I can see is that you want to pretty much break a level of your phone addiction. So you get your notifications on your watch, you can quickly glance at them and then just no longer care about them. You won't have to check your phone about it and then get lost in the random swiping, and then you start going onto Instagram, you start going through reels, all this sort of thing. Like, you don't have to do that. So effectively, yes, they're good. However, I wouldn't say that they're necessary for everyone, and that's a very key thing. So the first area that I want to discuss with you is going to be related to fitness, and more in particular, it actually tracking fitness and your heart rate. So the first main thing to mention is that this is kind of across the board on all of them, so don't expect it to be too much different between, let's say, this one, the Series 8, the Ultra, and so on. However, the main thing is that it doesn't necessarily track it perfectly. What you do know with the Apple Watch is that you are getting constant imperfect readings. However, you can then gauge a little bit off of that. I wouldn't say that it's off by miles. However, it isn't exactly precise all the time. For things like runs, it's great. It does actually track it quite well. It mixes things like, obviously, the way that your arm's moving mid-run, but also if, let's say, you're doing an outdoor run, it will track it via GPS to give you an actual precise idea of your distance. So that's great. However, one of the key issues that I find with it is things like working out in the gym. You're doing a push day, you're pushing that bench press, your heart rate's going up a little bit, and then it thinks that you've just burned like 20 calories in that one bench press, and you're like, yeah, I don't think I've just done that, but cool, thank you for telling me that. I guess my fitness pal will think that I am now, you know, absolutely able to eat as much food as I want because I'm burning so much in one quick session. And the only one that I'd say that it gets close to accurate really is leg day, and even then I'd say that it overestimates by quite a bit for the calories, mainly because Apple do this with heart rate more than anything. They calculate it by your heart rate, but also by the information that you give them. So in the health app, you'll be able to give them the information of, for example, your height, your shape of your body, and so on. And basically, it will then calculate a rough idea from there as to, okay, how much are you actually losing? And it does do a okay job, but not an amazing one. But in regards to heart rate tracking, it is, again, it's slightly off. Don't expect it to be perfect. And then the other main thing with heart rate tracking is more along the lines of sometimes it can be a little bit inaccurate in terms of, like, it will just sometimes not be able to track it if, let's say, you're a bit sweaty. Normally it's not too much of an issue, but the other one as well is if, for example, you have a tattoo. I don't have tattoos, so it's not an issue for me. But if you have a tattoo over where the actual bit can go, it will not be able to track your heart rate, and you have to put like a different sort of film on. I forgot where I've seen this, but it is the case that this is what happens to a lot of people who have tattoos. And the next one is going to be sleep, and I was really excited for this, not because of the Apple Watch. This came later on down the line, but across the board on Apple Watches and this one, I guess, the sleep tracking just isn't that great. I'm really disappointed, if I'm honest. One main thing that irritates me more than anything is that if you have an alarm set, for example, and you're sleeping, and then, you wake up to your alarm, the absolute, borderline, like, PTSD level of alarm sounds can go off, and then you hold your phone up, click that stop button, then your Apple Watch counts that as stopping your entire sleep, even if, for example, you then proceed to fall asleep for another 3 hours. The Apple Watch just stops tracking your sleep. And this makes no sense to me, and it does irritate me a little bit, more than a little bit, because it literally means that I have no reason to wear it. I don't care to wear it outside of running. And that is mainly because that's the main thing that it tracks really well, whereas for things like going to the gym, or things like, for example, sleeping, it doesn't do that great. But also, it's actually not that accurate in terms of actually getting the correct, like, sleep rhythms correct, and it just isn't an overall good idea. It tries to tell me, for example, that at times I'm getting, like, 1% REM sleep, and it's like, yeah, considering I felt absolutely really well energized this day, I don't think that's correct, but you know what? You do you. Next up is the battery life, and it's quoted to be 18 hours, and it's done perfectly in actually holding up to this standard, and I've had 0 issues in regards to it, so again, you shouldn't have really any issues. There is some people who will complain about, not lasting a whole day, but the thing is, those, to be honest, because of the size of it, it's kind of hard. Yes, some watches are able to go for longer, but not the same watches that have as much utility as an Apple Watch in terms of replacing a lot of what your phone does. So in the battery department, this is definitely a plus. Now, in regards to my actual reason why I don't wear an Apple Watch or a smartwatch of any manner is primarily because I really love an actual watch. I think that real watches are amazing, and yes, you can make the Apple Watch look really nice, and sometimes you can have like really nice braids and so on for it, but overall it's just not my cup of tea for it. Now, the other reason is that I'm just not a big fan of having literally everything on my wrist, and I think that if anything, for me, I never found that it helped towards like stopping me from scrolling on my phone. Normally it would be more of even more of a update of, oh, you've got a notification, go check your phone. And the amount of people that I've seen as well who have Apple Watches or smartwatches in general, and their watch will go off and they don't even look at the watch, they just get their phone out instantly instead. It's more of like a tagger, like literally just telling you, hey, by the way, you've got a notification. We're going to keep on beeping until you actually remember to check your phone. And it's something that I just kind of find amusing. And then lastly is that as much as I want to use like a smartwatch of all kinds, overall, I just don't find the actual utility in it, and I don't think for the majority of people anyway, there is much utility to use it for. So why should you buy one? One is that you can actually get it for a really good deal, but the second one is if you want a fitness companion and you want to get into fitness, or you're getting a bit more into it and you want something to track these things, then 100% I would recommend one of these for that exact purpose. However, don't expect it to like do like absolute wonders towards you working out. It's more just going to track everything and just give you a rough idea of things. It's not going to give you like extreme motivation on the days where you feel awful. That is down to you to get motivated. And then the other reason is if you want to find some way of trying to a little bit get away from your phone addiction, it might be able to help you. However, again, no guarantees there. And then the only real downside that I would say overall is just that its tracking isn't necessarily the most consistently good thing. It's consistently bad, I'd say, in terms of tracking, but that's actually a decent thing. I'd rather it be like consistently bad than like all over the place of one thing it does absolutely outstanding, the next it does awful, the next does okay, then it does awful, and so on. I'd rather it do underwhelming in the majority so that you kind of get a rough idea of what's going on. So I wouldn't say that this is necessarily a downside that's awful, because most trackers don't actually do a good job in exact measurements, as it's very hard to measure everything exactly. So take everything that I'm saying with a little bit of a pinch of salt, a little bit of cynicism in here, because I'm someone who's a little bit like, I love the idea of a smartwatch, however, I just can't get myself to truly love it. Anyway, hopefully this video was helpful when it comes to the idea of if you want to get a Series 5 Apple Watch, and I kind of mainly discussed the idea of an Apple Watch in general. The main takeaways for this is that you can get a really good Apple Watch for cheaper than their cheaper lineup right now, if you just accept getting a refurbished one, or even you could probably find a brand new one, like sold via like eBay or something like that, that's cheaper, so maybe you'll find it. But yeah, overall, I 100% recommend this if you're looking for an Apple Watch in particular. However, if you are simply looking for something, let's say like a fitness tracker, and you don't necessarily care too much, then something like a Fitbit might do the trick for you, or even something like a Whoop, for example, something that I've seen about quite often. They seem interesting, and the idea of them seems interesting. However, overall, the payments will stack up eventually. Anyway, with that all being said, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like, do subscribe for more content, and I'll see you guys next week. Have a good one.